Hello and welcome to Building Digital Solutions stream by Yalantis. My name is Victor Asachi, and together with our special guest today, I will lead you through the topic of data management and ETL processes. At Yalantis, we help businesses to bridge tech leadership and tech talent gaps with modern technology and software development practices, so you could scale, innovate, and monetize your products and solutions. And today, I invite you to explore the financial industry and the data industry with my special guest, Francesco Sardina, Senior Business Analyst at Fenion. Hello, Francesco, and welcome to our stream. The floor.
Hi, Victor. Hi, Victor. Thank you very much for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Oh, it's a great pleasure to have you. I think everybody is already waiting to get more details about the data management, about security, about data quality. So I'm also anticipating to see your presentation. So later after the presentation, if you don't mind, I will be asking some of the questions.
Sure, absolutely, yes. So let me share the screen.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Okay, great. So as Victor said, the topic of today is about data management. So the goal is to explain what are the challenges for fintechs or for companies that work with any data-intensive operations, and also what are the benefits of working with a very well-established ETL process, so extraction, transform, and load of data. So just for the beginning, just a few words about me. So I'm Francesco, I'm from Italy. I'm living in Austria since 4.5 years, and I'm Senior Business Analyst at Fenion. Fenion is a fintech that is working into three main businesses. The first one is regulatory reporting, where we receiving raw data, we transform that, and we sell regulatory reports or individual reports. Then we have fund data streams, so a database of fund information, and we sell full holdings of these investment funds and legal documents. And then the third field is consulting. Before Fenion, I was working in market risk management, and before that in consulting in the wealth and asset management department. So when we talk about data, there are a variety of information and an enormous quantity of financial information we can categorize. Based on also what Fenion is processing, we try to do a categorization. As financial data, we can talk about, for instance, transactional data that are data regarding sales, purchases, and payments. Then we have market data, data about securities or financial markets, investments. Then another category is risk data, so data regarding assessment and management of financial risks. Then accounting data, so information about financial statements, records, like including balance sheet or income statement information, and regulatory data, so information required for compliance with financial regulation. And all these informations have usually similar and general characteristics. So when we are when we are processing this information, usually these are coming with an enormous quantity and needs to be processed daily. So the first characteristics of this information for fintech or big companies that are dealing with this is that they need to have a process in place that is able to handle an enormous quantity of information. And then we should be able to process this information that are coming from different sources and that have different formats. And sometimes if we are dealing with financial market information, we need to deal with real-time processing, because due to the dynamic nature of the market, we need an immediate process, and we need to have availability of this data in our system. So we can have also these real-time requirements. And then important is also we need high accuracy of this information, because we are dealing with data that will be transformed in order to create some reports. And reports has the goal to make decisions, because people or companies, thanks to this report, will make some decisions. And the better the quality we send, the better the decision will be. So it's important to have high quality of this information. And we have usually different challenges when we are dealing with financial data. The first one is data quality, because we are receiving tons of information. So we usually receive obviously not high quality information sometimes. So we need to deal with issues, and we need to understand how we can fix some errors. Another important point and challenge is data security. So we must have a process that stores securely this information, because we are dealing with very sensitive data. And then we need to be always compliant with regulation, so with data-related regulations, in order to avoid any legal penalties. And our process, this is very important, must be scalable, because as our company grows, also the complexity of data requirements are growing. And so we must have a process that is able to scale. So we have in place the so-called ETL process. It's a three-stage process where we have extraction, transformation, and load process. This is the general view of this process. So at the first part, we have the extraction. So we collect information and this data from different sources. And this can be homogeneous or heterogeneous sources. Then after the extraction, we have the transformation, meaning that we can transform, we can clean, we can aggregate, and do any type of transformation at this stage. We can also translate some code values. For instance, if we have from the sources, from one source, we have instrument type as a bond that is categorized as B, and we transform these code values in 1 and 2 based on what we want in our data warehouse. And the transformation must be done here at this stage. So then we can aggregate, join columns, we can split columns, we can disaggregate, and so on and so forth. And then when we can create a standardized table that we want, we load this information into our destination, into our data warehouse. Fenion is using this ETL process, and it's we have 5 steps we follow. We have the first one, that is import and extraction, as we saw in the general graph before. And we receiving different type of formats. We have XLS, CSV, XML, individual format, and we can receive it in a different way, via email, as FTP, SFTP, and via API. And then we harmonize into a standardized table. It's important to mention that between point 1 and point 2, we have the first layer of data checks that are important in order to validate what we are receiving, in order also to process only what we want to process and not everything. Then we harmonize into a standardized table, and we enrich sometimes, if this is requested from the client, we enrich some information. And this can be done at the third step. Then we do quantitative calculation, like we can calculate KPI or risk factors based on the client requests. And before the export, so before the step number 5, we do another round of data quality checks. And this is very important, because at this last quality checks, we ensure the completeness of our data set, the completeness of our report. So we ensure that we are sending the best report as we can. And then at the end, we do the export and we send the report, we do the delivery. So as mentioned here, it's very important to focus at these 2 data quality steps, these 2 layers of data quality, because when we are talking about data, it's important to solve the issue of data quality, so information that we are receiving. So we need to have a process with some stages in place where we run some data checks. So in our company, we have different categories of checks that can be applied in different fintechs or in big companies. The first one is industry-specific operational checks. These are checks regarding the business itself, so are very specific. For instance, in our case, Fenion is dealing with investment funds. And the fund is a pool of investments of direct holdings. Means that we have the information of the fund as a whole. So we have the price of the fund, but we have also information of what it is inside the fund. So information regarding the assets, the equity bonds, for instance, that is inside the fund. So market value, for instance, of some equity position. So in our case, the specific operational checks are on position, on holding level, and on fund level. So on the fund as a whole, and also what it is inside. But this is different based on the business side. Then we have completeness checks, meaning that we must be sure that a specific cell, specific values must be filled out. So we cannot have empty values. Then plausibility checks. So some values must be in a specific predefined range. So we need to detect some outliers. So we must be sure that specific fields cannot exceed a value. This is based on the business side, but this is very important as well. Then we do cross-field checks. So we don't look only at one specific item, but it's a check where we need to consider many items at the same time. They need to behave in a certain way. And this is based on the business logic. Then cross-time checks. And this is very important before we send the report, because we check the data fields at a specific date, and also what we already sent to the client in a previous reporting date. And if the difference is huge between the same data fields, then we need to understand why, and if this is correct or not. And then integrity and consistency check. So we need to verify that our data are accurate, and we need to verify that these are consistent across all our systems. Just to give a very easy example, here we have a table from a database where we have different columns. We have the first one, ISIN, so identification code for financial instruments. Then we have date, currency, country, the sector, and the instrument type. And we see some issues here. So imagine we have millions of these rows, and our process must be able to detect that there are some issues. So on the third column, we have an issue because we have an industry-specific operational check that is running and must be able to understand that there should be a currency, but we have an ISIN in the last row, and this is wrong. On the fourth column, we have a problem of consistency and integrity, because we have countries there, but these are described in two different ways. We have countries with a two ISO, this international standard, a way to mention a country with two letters. And then we have the whole text in German. So across all our system, we should have only one way, one consistent way where we mention countries. And these are two ways, so this should be amended. On the other column, the next column, we have empty values. So if we run some completeness checks, we must be sure that this column is always filled out. So in this case, we have empty values, and this is wrong. And the last column, again, we have a problem of consistency checks. So it's we mention a financial instrument that is a bond, but it's called in three different ways. It's called BN, is mentioned alliance, or bond in German, and bonds. But we should use only one way. Then, in order to have the better quality, it's important to have a process in place from the development as well, and then deployment, and also the process management. So in our company, we try to utilize the so-called microservice approach. So when we run one service, it's important that this service is responsible only for one job in order to have everything efficient. And then we try to have up-to-date libraries in order to speed up the software in our development process, and to have testing in all levels. What does it mean? It means that we do unit testing for what is changing, integration testing with all the other systems, and then end-to-end testing. That's very important. And if it is possible, and the project is allowing this, we can create customized visual solution. Then also for the deployment side, we have fully automated deployment, and we try to automate also this testing pipeline. And we have isolated the environment for each step, meaning that we have the development, the staging, and the production, the development, testing, staging, and production that are isolated. And we try to use cloud that is secure, and it's very easy also for scaling. Then it's very important, in order to have a very efficient ETL process, to be agile and to have a good process management. So we usually use one dashboard where we see all the tasks, so we know who is doing what and what are the responsibilities, and we have interaction in the team. And we also are able in this way to see, to keep an eye on productivity, so to see who is doing what, and to calculate also some KPIs. So for us, it's very important to create an established and efficient and smoothly ETL process. And there are different reasons. And it's very important to have data quality checks that ensure the best quality we can send to the client. The first reason is why this should be done is that with high quality information, companies can make very good decisions. So these reports has the goal to make some decisions. So the best quality we send, the best decision they will make. Then with automation, we decrease the time to delivery, and we also decrease the time to delivery, and we increase the frequency. And this is possible because of automation. And it's also very easy to scale, particularly if we are using the cloud. And a robust ETL process is easy to enables business to scale and adapt also efficiently. And with automation, it's also easy to reduce the cost, because also resources will not focus on manual work, but they will focus on high-level tasks. And so there is optimization of resources. So also, as we saw in the checks before, we maintain data integrity, consistency, and accuracy. And we are more compliant with the regulation, with data regulatory frameworks, in order to avoid any legal penalties, and also in order to avoid any reputational damage. And another important point is that a company that sells high quality information, it gains a competitive advantage. And quality sets the company apart from the competitors and position itself to a high quality company. So that's very important. So we usually follow different steps in order to ensure high quality. The first one is documentation and transparency. Okay, it's important to say that a good ETL process will for sure make life easier. So the first thing that needs to be done in order to understand also the report and what we want to do with the data is documentation. So we need to explain what is the report, but also what are the quality checks we want to implement. And then in the second step, it's important that the implementation and the development side is also creating the so-called error tracking and logging procedures, so that all the time there are some issues coming up, there is an error message where all people can immediately understand what it is the problem, even if they don't have any IT knowledge. And then look into the documentation, they can understand immediately what needs to be done. And so these steps needs to work together. And then, particularly if we do big changes, but also we do regular meetings in order to receive some feedbacks, in order to understand if our requirements and our data quality checks are in line with the clients and with the business requirements. So it's important to have this feedback, these improvement cycles. And this is possible only if there is collaboration between the team and only if everyone knows what needs to be done. And this is very important, particularly in smaller teams. And it's important in order to assure the best quality and the best efficiency inside the company. So I hope you enjoyed this. The goal was to show how it's very important and to create a well-established ETL process instead of using some manual work. Procedures like, for instance, Excel, when we have a huge process, it's very bad to use always manual procedures like Excel because it's not scalable and doesn't lead to efficiency. Instead, it leads to nightmares and headache.
That's true. That's true. Thank you so much for the presentation. Actually, I have a couple questions I noted down while listening. If you don't mind, I will first jump into those ones because I did enjoy it. And I have to clarify some things. I'm sure our listeners will have the same questions, if you don't mind.
Sure, great.
All right. Well, the first thing, you've mentioned the process of harmonization data, right? A couple of times in your presentation. Would you just explain more about the process of harmonization, what it is in general? And we saw how it happens, but I'm sure listeners would also like to hear more about what it is and what it gives as an advantage and as a part of creating streamlined data pipelines.
Yes, when we talk about harmonization, it's important to create the so-called structured data table. So we are receiving a lot of information. We are receiving tons of data, and we don't care about all the information that we are receiving. So what we care is that we take only what we need to process, and then we transform this information. And harmonization means that then we transfer this information into a standardized format. So meaning that based on the business type, we have a big table or many big tables where we have defined a way how to structure this information that are the best for us, the best for the business in order then to create the final report. So harmonization meaning that we need to create this table that is storing in the best way as we can the information that we really care from the sources.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that sounds really clear right now to me. Thank you so much. And before we jump into more questions, you've mentioned the number of checks you make, and there was a whole slide dedicated to all of them. And I guess possibly as an entrepreneur or possibly as a person investing in such a procedure, I would like to ask a question. Are all of those checks always necessary? Is there a percentage that should be done like a basic one, or all of them are actually an integral part and can't be skipped to ensure high quality of data and the reporting?
It's very important for us to have the vast majority of checks possible. Imagine when we need to create a new report. So when we have a request from a client that we need to create something new, the first thing that is very important, as I mentioned, is documentation. And the analyst, the business side, is doing documentation not only about the reports, but also all the possible issues we can have. So we have a study of the columns of the fields, and we must be ensured that all possible scenarios are covered. And then we document all possible data validation checks that we want to implement in the system. And at the beginning, we try to cover all possible scenarios, so we don't have a limit to the checks we can implement. But then over time, with feedback and review meetings, we always increase the number of checks because we can have feedback from the client, we can have feedbacks from regulators or from auditors. So we usually increment the number of checks. But at the beginning, when we have the implementation, we try to develop the vast majority of checks possible that cover all possible issues and all possible cases.
That's great. Yeah, but that makes a lot of sense because nothing gets missed out, at least nothing that we know of, right? Okay, well, that's amazing. And the final question about the presentation. You mentioned that there is a whole development process, and of course, there are so many processes in the background for delivering the information, the reporting, the insights. And does it mean that you actually create whole analytical systems for your clients and connect them, integrate them, or implement them with their current systems or as separate systems for their analytic purposes?
Yes, this can happen. It actually depends on the client request. Usually our approach is that we are receiving raw data from clients. We know what needs to be done, what calculation needs to be done. And then based on the client's requests, we create a way to deliver this information. So sometimes, as you mentioned, we have integration of the systems. Sometimes we need to send only some files. Sometimes we have platforms. So it really depends on the client's requirements that are related not only with data, but also on the data security. So sometimes there are some tools and protocols to be followed in order to be ensured that the client's requirements about securities are also followed.
That's great. I mean, that's really good for the clients because they have many options, not a single one. It's not only about developing a whole system and maintaining it later. It can be a one-time, right? A one-time development. It can be a delivery of the files. It can be an interconnected system that will be regularly delivering them. That's great. Thank you so much. I'm actually really excited. I love this topic, and especially in the terms of regulatory, I would say, complications that are happening due to the AI booming and people worrying about it. I have a couple of questions related with data, and if you don't mind, I will jump into those. How do you identify and address inaccuracies and inconsistencies in financial data? You've actually showed us a presentation of a table, but I would really appreciate if there are more examples of how you can deal with those inaccuracies, maybe other ways to discovering them.
Yes, we try to identify all the inaccuracies, all the issues with all these data validation checks. And so we try to study at the beginning the reports and all the possible scenarios of issues we can have. Another important point is that when we do our first delivery of a report that we never sent, it's very important for us to pay a lot of attention and to receive also some feedbacks from the clients. So sometimes if there are some inaccuracies, we receive obviously feedbacks from clients, and we have regular meetings where we improve our systems, our data validation and checks. If any error is detected, we need to understand what is the root cause of the error. So we need to understand if there are any inaccuracies, why this happened. We need to reconcile the data and doing regular review and update the validation rules accordingly. And also, sometimes some reports are also audited. So we have auditors that are giving us feedbacks, and this is very good so that we can improve our reports and our systems as well. And another point that I mentioned in the slide is the so-called cross-time checks. So when we send the report, we have some checks running where we compare the figures of the specific reporting date compared to the same figures of the previous reporting date. So in this case, if there are, for instance, some anomalies like huge values, and this is not correct, we immediately see this. So then we can check if this is wrong or not, and we can apply some rules and we can fix it in case this is an issue.
Wow, I actually like how many layers of checking and ensuring that the inaccuracies and inconsistencies are eliminated. If I'm getting it correctly, there is the tooling level and manual level when you can actually see this. Then there is processing level, and it's the part of the processes, well-established ones, to ensure that nothing is missed. And even after that, there is more. There could be an auditor additionally attracted to ensure, and also a level of cross-time checks, right?
Correct.
Wow.
Correct.
Wow, that's great. That's actually really calming me down if I was worrying about my data quality and the fact that I'm not processing it myself. That would actually definitely make me feel comfortable and okay with doing it this way. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Well, there is another question. When evaluating new data and new data security tools and protocols, what are the key considerations? What are the things that you worry most about when you start working with, say, a new source of data, a new instrument that it was requested by the client, or maybe some kind of a standard that they asked to stick to? What would be these considerations?
Yes, when we need to choose the security tool or the specific protocol, there are different steps we are following. In order to choose one protocol instead of another one, the first question is how secure is it to choose the first or the second, and which risks are mitigated using a specific tool compared to another one. And also very important is what are the client's requirements, because some clients can request a specific security tool, a security protocol, and other clients can not request anything. So it really depends on the client's requirements. And it's very important also to understand if the tool or the protocol is recent or not, and if this is receiving updates, meaning that if the client wants a protocol that is 15 years old and is not updated anymore, then can be a security breach. We can have an issue because it's not updated anymore, so this can be dangerous. And then another important point is that the protocol or the security tool we are choosing should be compliant with regulation and should be accepted by the market.
That's great. So you basically have a risk assessment approach to every single protocol and tooling that you're planning or requested to use. That's great. Thank you. That sounds that makes a lot of sense. All right. And you've mentioned already the fact that you will have to be ready to the updates, right? And how do you stay updated with the latest financial regulations, say some compliance regulations when performing data analysis?
Yes, we have a team of researchers, the people that are checking if there are new regulations coming recently. However, if we are talking about big changes of the regulatory framework, these are coming with a lot of time in advance. So we know from regulators or even sometimes from clients or auditors that are telling us if we updated our framework based on something that will come in the future. So this is usually, we know this with a lot of time in advance, and we have a team of people that are checking if new things are coming from specific regulatory frameworks.
I actually noted it down. That's like a really mature approach to have a specific person dedicated to ensuring that no regulation or no standard comes out of the blue and just shakes you with the fact that you now have to implement it. That's a great approach. Well, thank you so much. Well, the last one, I guess, because we are pressed for time, the last one would be about scaling financial data systems and the challenges while doing those. I mean, you've mentioned already that you normally use the microservice approach when developing architectures for data, right? But maybe there are more challenges when scaling those systems, specifically for big and enterprise businesses, I guess.
Yeah, the easiest way for scaling for us is first to use cloud environment. Because when we are using cloud environment, it's very easy to scale, because if we need much space, then we buy it and it's easier. Another important thing is that our process must be able to run many jobs in parallel, the so-called parallelization. So our process must be able, in order to scale, to run different services at the same time, and to also to be in the cloud, so that we are very fast. And then important thing from the input is that the code must be very efficient, because if the code is efficient, then we can do this parallelization, and then we use cloud, and then we can easily scale.
That's great. So everything has already been planned beforehand, right? Before you create the solution, you actually plan how it can be scaled and adapted later on.
Yeah, that's for us, it's very important that we have some predefined steps, so that all the strategy, the company strategy, is following the steps we already planned at the beginning. And also, if we have challenges, and it's normal to have daily challenges, we know which steps needs to be followed in order to solve all these issues.
That's great. Well, there are so many questions I would like to ask more, I guess, but unfortunately, the fact that we're pressed for time doesn't allow me to do so. So what I suggest to our listeners is to get in touch with us later on. Feel free, guys, to ask the questions we haven't covered yet. Once you complete listening to this recording, feel free to reach out to us for more questions about data management, about ETL processes. Wow, I'm really actually excited, and I'm sure that our listeners will also feel the same once they hear this presentation and listen to the answers to those questions. But of course, we are here to answer more of them. I think it was awesome, and I think that there are so many insights already. But if there is something we haven't covered yet, you feel free to reach out to us via email, hello@yalantis.com. You feel free to reach out to our website, yalantis.com, or on our LinkedIn and YouTube. And of course, feel free to reach out to Francesco on his LinkedIn account, and feel free to reach out directly to me for more questions. We will definitely transport and transfer those to Francesco for more questions and get you connected with him and with Fenion as well. And I just wanted to thank you so much for these insights and for the presentation. It was just great.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you for the opportunity. It was great to talk with you today.
The same. Well, hope everyone enjoyed it as well, and have a good time.